What happens when royal privilege collides with American late-night television? In just 36 seconds, one careless comment would turn a simple interview into the most explosive talk show moment of the year. Bill Maher sat behind his desk that Friday night, the studio audience buzzing with anticipation. Prince Harry had agreed to appear on the show, a rare move that had entertainment media speculating for weeks. The prince walked out to thunderous applause, waving to the crowd with that signature royal smile. He settled into the guest chair, adjusting his jacket as the cameras zoomed in. "Welcome to the show," Bill said, his tone friendly but measured. "Thanks for joining us tonight." "Happy to be here," Harry replied, his British accent crisp and clear. Bill leaned forward, getting comfortable. "So let's jump right in. You've been living in California for a while now. How are you finding American life?" Harry laughed, but there was something forced about it. "Well, it's different, isn't it? Everything is so big here. Big cars, big houses, big egos." The audience chuckled nervously. Bill raised an eyebrow. "Big egos? That's an interesting observation." "Just calling it like I see it," Harry said, sitting back in his chair with a casual shrug. "Americans love to talk about themselves. It's quite exhausting, really." Bill's expression shifted slightly. The audience went quiet. "That's a pretty broad generalization, don't you think?" "Is it, though?" Harry crossed his legs, his posture radiating confidence. "I mean, look at your entire media landscape. Everyone fighting to be heard, to be seen, to be relevant. It's all rather desperate." "Desperate," Bill repeated slowly, his voice taking on an edge. "That's the word you're going with?" Harry seemed oblivious to the tension building in the room. "I'm just being honest. In Britain, we have a bit more decorum, more class. We don't feel the need to constantly broadcast our opinions to the world." Bill let out a short laugh, shaking his head. "Right, because the British tabloid industry is known for its restraint and dignity." "That's different," Harry said quickly. "The tabloids are one thing. I'm talking about regular people." "Regular people," Bill said, his voice flat. "So the 330 million Americans living their lives are all desperate attention seekers? Is that what you're telling my audience right now?" The crowd began to murmur. Harry shifted in his seat, but he didn't back down. "I'm not saying all Americans, I'm saying there's a cultural difference. You have to admit, the American need for validation is quite pronounced." Bill placed both hands on his desk, leaning forward. "Let me get this straight. You, a prince, someone who was born into wealth and privilege, someone who has never had to work a real job in his entire life, is sitting on my show criticizing Americans for seeking validation?" "Now wait a minute," Harry interjected, his face flushing. "I've worked plenty. I've served my country." "You served in the military, which is admirable," Bill acknowledged. "But let's be real here. You were born with every advantage imaginable. You've never had to worry about paying rent, never had to wonder where your next meal was coming from, never had to send out resumes hoping someone would give you a chance." Harry's jaw tightened. "You don't know anything about my struggles." "Your struggles?" Bill's voice rose slightly. "Your struggles? My audience works 2 jobs to make ends meet. They worry about healthcare, student loans, keeping a roof over their kids' heads. Those are struggles. What you're describing sounds like inconvenience." "This is exactly what I'm talking about," Harry said, his voice getting louder. "This aggressive, confrontational style. Can't we have a civil conversation?" "We absolutely can have a civil conversation," Bill replied calmly. "But civil doesn't mean I'm going to sit here and let you insult an entire nation of people, including everyone in this room, without pushing back." Harry stood up slightly in his chair, clearly agitated. "I didn't insult anyone. I made an observation." "An observation?" Bill repeated. "Okay, let me make an observation. You came to this country seeking privacy and freedom from the British press. Americans welcomed you. California gave you a home. And now you're sitting here on an American television show, being paid to appear, I might add, telling us all how desperate and classless we are. Does that seem grateful to you?" The audience erupted in applause. Harry's face turned red. "I never said classless. You said we lack class," Bill countered. "That's the same thing. And you said we lack decorum. You're sitting in my studio, on my show, insulting my country while benefiting from all the freedoms and opportunities it provides you." "I think you're twisting my words," Harry said, his voice strained. "I'm using your exact words," Bill shot back. "You said Americans are desperate. You said we have big egos. You said we lacked decorum and class. I didn't put those words in your mouth. Harry uncrossed his legs and leaned forward aggressively. Maybe Americans are too sensitive. Maybe that's the real problem. The audience gasped. Bill went very still. Too sensitive. Now we're too sensitive. Yes, Harry continued, digging himself deeper. You can't say anything without someone getting offended. It's political correctness gone mad. Political correctness gone mad, Bill said slowly. That's rich, coming from someone who literally sued newspapers for printing unflattering stories. You, who demanded apologies from journalists. You, who went on international television to complain about how hard your life has been, but Americans are too sensitive? Harry stood up from his chair. I don't have to sit here and be attacked like this. Attacked? Bill remained seated, his voice level. I'm responding to the things you're saying. If you feel attacked, maybe it's because you're realizing how your words sound when someone actually challenges them. This is absurd, Harry said, his hands gesturing wildly. I came here for a conversation, not an interrogation. You came here and immediately started criticizing my country and my audience, Bill replied firmly. What did you think was going to happen? That I'd just nod along and agree with you? Harry pointed at Bill. You Americans always think you're right about everything. It's insufferable. The audience booed. Bill raised his hands to quiet them. Okay, now we're insufferable too. Let me ask you something. If America is so terrible, if Americans are so desperate and classless and insufferable, why are you still here? Why didn't you go to France, or Spain, or literally anywhere else in the world? Harry's mouth opened and closed. Because California offered us opportunities. Exactly, Bill said triumphantly. This terrible, classless, desperate country offered you opportunities. It gave you a platform. It gave you business deals and security and a lifestyle most people can only dream about. And your way of saying thank you is to come on television and tell us how much better British people are? I never said British people are better, Harry protested. You absolutely implied it, Bill countered. You said Britain has more decorum and class. You contrasted American desperation with British sophistication. What else could that possibly mean? Harry started pacing behind the chair. You're deliberately misunderstanding me. I'm understanding you perfectly, Bill said. You're uncomfortable because someone is finally pushing back against your narrative. You've gotten used to softball interviews where people treat you with kid gloves because of your title. But this is America. We don't bow to royalty here. We fought a war specifically so we wouldn't have to. Oh, here we go with the Revolutionary War, Harry said dismissively, waving his hand. That was 250 years ago. Get over it. The audience booed louder. Bill held up a hand again. Get over it? Our entire nation was founded on the principle that no one is better than anyone else just because of their bloodline. That's not something we need to get over. That's something we're proud of. Harry turned back to face Bill directly. Your country is falling apart. Your politics are a mess. Your healthcare system is broken. Your education system is failing. But sure, keep waving that flag and pretending everything is wonderful. Bill stood up now too. Our country has problems. Real problems. Problems we're actively working to fix. But at least we have the freedom to talk about those problems openly without being thrown in a tower. At least our press can criticize our leaders without fear. At least our citizens can vote for their representatives. Can you say the same about your monarchy? The monarchy is a tradition, Harry said defensively. It's part of our culture. A tradition built on colonialism and inherited power, Bill replied sharply. A tradition where one family lives in palaces while regular British citizens struggle with poverty. But tell me more about American ego. Harry's voice rose to almost a shout. At least we have history. At least we have culture that goes back centuries. America is barely an infant in comparison. An infant that became the most powerful nation on earth in less than 300 years, Bill fired back. An infant that people from all over the world, including you apparently, want to move to. An infant that has shaped global culture, technology, and entertainment. We might be young, but we've accomplished more in our short existence than most countries do in a millennium, Harry laughed bitterly. American exceptionalism at its finest. You really believe you're better than everyone else? I never said we're better than everyone else. Bill clarified. I said we don't appreciate being insulted in our own house by someone who chose to move here. There's a difference. Maybe I made a mistake coming to America, Harry said coldly. Maybe you did, Bill agreed. But you're here now, living off American opportunities, making American money, raising your kids as American citizens. So either commit to being here and show some respect, or leave and stop complaining. Harry's hands clenched into fists. You don't get to tell me what to do. Do you know who I am? The room went silent. Those 6 words hung in the air like a bomb. Bill stared at Harry for a long moment before responding. Yeah, I know exactly who you are. You're a guest on my show who has spent the last 15 minutes insulting my country and my audience. That's who you are right now. I'm a prince, Harry said, his voice dripping with condescension. I'm royalty. You should show me some respect. Bill laughed, a genuine, incredulous laugh. Respect? You want respect? Respect is earned, not inherited. And right now, based on your behavior, you've earned nothing but criticism. Harry stepped toward the desk. How dare you speak to me like this? I could have gone on any show. I chose yours. You should be grateful. Grateful? Bill's voice was sharp now. You think I should be grateful that you came here to trash talk my country? You think that's doing me a favor? I think you're a nobody who got lucky with a television show, Harry spat out. You're a comedian who thinks he's a political expert. It's embarrassing. The audience erupted in angry shouts. Bill remained calm, but his eyes were ice cold. A nobody. Interesting. This nobody built a career through actual work. This nobody earned his platform by making people laugh and think for decades. This nobody wasn't handed anything because of who his parents were. You're jealous, Harry accused, pointing his finger. That's what this is really about. You're jealous because you'll never be anything more than a talk show host while I was born into greatness. Bill shook his head slowly. Born into greatness. Listen to yourself. You really believe that being born into a specific family makes you great? That's not greatness. That's luck. Greatness is what you do with your life, not what family you happen to be born into. I've done plenty with my life, Harry insisted. Have you though? Bill challenged. You left your royal duties. You moved to another country. You've done some interviews and signed some business deals. What have you actually built? What have you created? What have you contributed beyond complaining about how hard your privileged life has been? Harry's face was now completely red. I've raised awareness about mental health. I've supported charities. I've done more good than you ever will. Supporting charities with inherited money isn't the same as actually working to make a difference, Bill responded. And raising awareness about mental health while simultaneously trashing an entire nation of people is pretty contradictory, don't you think? This interview is over, Harry declared, ripping off his microphone. You don't get to decide when this interview is over, Bill said firmly. You're on my show. I decide. Harry threw the microphone onto the chair. Watch me. So, you're just going to run away? Bill called out as Harry started to walk toward the edge of the stage. That's your response when someone challenges you? To quit and leave? Harry spun around. I don't have to tolerate this abuse. Abuse? Bill's voice rose. I'm responding to the things you said. If you can't handle someone disagreeing with you, maybe you shouldn't go on talk shows. Maybe you should stick to pre-approved interviews where they let you say whatever you want without pushback. You're a bully, Harry shouted. A typical American bully who thinks being loud makes him right. And you're an entitled prince who thinks being born into wealth makes him superior, Bill shouted back. At least I'm honest about who I am. You're walking around pretending to be some champion of the common people while looking down on everyone who wasn't lucky enough to be born royal. Harry took several steps back toward the desk, his face contorted with anger. You have no idea what it's like to live under constant scrutiny, to have every move analyzed and criticized. You're right, I don't, Bill admitted. But I also didn't choose that life and then complain about it endlessly. You were born into royalty. That comes with scrutiny. If you didn't want that life, you could have quietly stepped away and lived privately. Instead, you've done interview after interview, documentary after documentary, telling the world how victimized you are. You can't have it both ways. I have a right to tell my story, Harry insisted. You absolutely do, Bill agreed. And I have a right to question that story when you come on my show. That's how conversations work. You don't get to control the narrative here. Harry looked around at the audience, seeing nothing but hostile faces staring back at him. You've turned them against me. I didn't turn anyone against you, Bill said calmly. You did that yourself with your words. I just gave you enough rope. This is a setup, Harry accused. You brought me here to humiliate me. I brought you here to have a conversation, Bill corrected. You're the one who started insulting Americans. You're the one who claimed we're desperate and classless. You're the one who said we lack decorum. You set this up yourself." Harry looked at the cameras, then back at Bill. "My family will hear about this." Bill spread his hands wide. "Please, tell them. Tell them how you came on an American talk show and insulted the entire country. Tell them how you claim royalty makes you better than everyone else. I'm sure they'll be thrilled with how you represented them tonight." "You haven't heard the last of this," Harry threatened. "Probably not," Bill acknowledged. "I'm sure your publicist is already drafting a statement about how I took your words out of context. But we have cameras. We have an audience. Everyone here heard exactly what you said." Harry started walking off the stage again. Bill called after him. "That's it? You're really leaving? You're going to storm off my show because you couldn't handle a real conversation?" Harry stopped at the edge of the stage but didn't turn around. His shoulders were tense, his whole body radiating fury. "This is what privilege looks like, folks," Bill said to the audience and cameras. "When someone is so used to people agreeing with them, so used to people bowing and scraping, that they literally can't handle basic pushback, they run away." Harry whipped around one final time. "I feel sorry for you. I really do. You're so desperate to be relevant that you'll attack anyone who comes on your show. It's pathetic." "Pathetic," Bill repeated. "That's what I am. Not the guy who moved to California for privacy and then put out a Netflix series. Not the guy who complained about media attention and then wrote a tell-all book. Not the guy who claimed to want a normal life and then did every high-profile interview available. No, I'm the pathetic one for pointing out the hypocrisy." "Goodbye, Bill," Harry said coldly. "Goodbye, Your Highness," Bill replied with exaggerated formality, giving a mock bow. "Thanks for stopping by and reminding us all why America fought for independence." Harry disappeared off stage. The audience sat in stunned silence for a moment before erupting into applause. Bill returned to his desk, shaking his head in apparent disbelief. "Well," Bill said to the cameras, "that went well." The audience laughed, the tension finally breaking. "I want to be clear about something," Bill continued, his tone more serious now. "I have nothing against Prince Harry personally. I don't know him, but when someone comes on this show and insults the hardworking people who make up this country, I'm gonna say something. I don't care if you're a prince or a president or the Pope himself. Disrespect my audience, and I'll call it out." The crowd applauded again, louder this time. "We invited him here for a conversation," Bill went on. "A real conversation, not a puff piece. Not a platform for him to lecture us about how much better British culture is. He knew what this show was. He knew how I operate. If he wanted a friendly chat with no pushback, he should have gone on a morning show." Bill took a sip of water, collecting his thoughts. "And that line about being born into greatness," Bill continued, shaking his head. "That really got me. Imagine actually believing that. Imagine thinking you're inherently better than other people because of your bloodline. That's not confidence. That's not pride. That's delusion," the audience murmured in agreement. "Here's the thing about America," Bill said, leaning back in his chair. "We're not perfect. Far from it. We have serious problems we need to address. But what makes this country special is that we're constantly working on those problems. We don't just accept things because that's how they've always been. We question. We challenge. We push for change. That's not desperation. That's democracy." More applause filled the studio. "And yes, maybe we do have bigger egos than other countries," Bill admitted with a slight smile. "Maybe we are more confident, more outspoken, more willing to promote ourselves. But you know what? That confidence built this nation. That willingness to speak up, to stand out, to refuse to bow to authority created the most dynamic economy and culture in the world." Bill looked directly into the camera. "So if Prince Harry wants to go back to Britain where everyone knows their place and stays quiet, he's welcome to leave. But if he's going to stay here and enjoy all the benefits America offers, maybe he should think twice before insulting the people who welcomed him with open arms." The audience rose to their feet, giving a standing ovation. "We need to take a break," Bill announced. "When we come back, we'll have a guest who actually appreciates being here." The show cut to commercial. Backstage, producers scrambled to figure out what had just happened. Security had escorted Prince Harry out of the building. His publicist was already on the phone, trying to control the damage. But it was too late. The cameras had captured everything. The audience had witnessed it all. Within minutes, clips would be spreading across social media. Within hours, it would be the top story on every news site. Back in the studio, as the commercial break continued, Bill sat at his desk reviewing notes for his next guest. A production assistant approached nervously. "That was intense," she said quietly. Bill looked up. He came here with an attitude. "I just responded to it." "Do you think you were too hard on him?" she asked. Bill considered the question for a moment. "No, I think I was exactly as hard as I needed to be. Someone needed to tell him that his title doesn't give him the right to insult people. Better it happens here where he can walk away than in the real world where consequences are permanent." The assistant nodded and walked away. Bill straightened his papers and prepared for the show to resume. The stage manager counted down. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. "We're back," Bill said to the camera, his composure completely restored. "As you just saw, Prince Harry has left the building. Literally, which is fine. We have plenty more show to get through, and honestly, I think we're all ready to move on to someone who can handle a real conversation." The audience laughed and applauded. "But before we bring out our next guest, I want to say one more thing," Bill continued. "What you just witnessed is exactly why this show exists. We don't do puff pieces here. We don't let people come on and say whatever they want without challenge. We ask tough questions. We push back. We hold people accountable for their words. That's our job." Bill paused, letting his words sink in. "Some people can handle that," he went on. "Some people appreciate having a real dialogue where both sides get to speak their minds. And some people, well, they run away the moment someone disagrees with them. Now you know which category our previous guest falls into." The audience erupted again. Bill smiled and gestured toward the side of the stage. "But enough about that. Let's bring out someone who's actually accomplished something through hard work and talent rather than just being born lucky." As the next guest walked out to thunderous applause, the energy in the studio shifted completely. The tension dissolved. The show went on, but everyone in that room knew they had just witnessed something extraordinary. They had seen entitlement confronted head-on. They had watched privilege crumble when challenged. They had witnessed what happens when someone used to deference meets someone unwilling to provide it. And that, more than anything else that happened that night, was what made the moment so powerful. It wasn't just about one uncomfortable interview. It was about a broader principle, about equality, about merit, about the idea that no one, regardless of their title or status, is above criticism. That's what Bill had defended. That's what the audience had supported. That's what made America different from countries with monarchies and inherited power. The rest of the show continued without incident. The remaining guests were thoughtful, engaging, and grateful to be there. They understood the format. They came prepared for real conversations. They didn't expect to be treated with kid gloves just because of who they were or what they had accomplished. As the show wrapped up and the credits rolled, Bill thanked the audience for their energy and support. He didn't mention Prince Harry again. There was no need. The moment had spoken for itself. Everyone who had been there, everyone watching at home, everyone who would see the clips online, they would all draw their own conclusions. The studio audience filed out, buzzing with excitement about what they had witnessed. This was the kind of moment people would talk about for years. The night Prince Harry walked off a talk show because he couldn't handle being challenged. The night entitlement met its match. The night someone finally said what millions of people had been thinking but were too polite to voice. Bill remained on set after everyone had left, talking quietly with his producers about the show. They discussed whether they had gone too far, whether there would be legal ramifications, whether the network would face pressure to apologize. But Bill was firm in his position. He had done nothing wrong. He had simply responded to what his guest had said. If Prince Harry couldn't handle that, it reflected on him, not on the show. As the lights in the studio dimmed and the crew began breaking down the set, Bill gathered his things and prepared to leave. It had been an extraordinary night, one that would define his show for a long time to come. But in his mind, it was simple. Someone had disrespected his audience, and he had defended them. That's what a good host does. That's what America expects. That's what he would do again in a heartbeat if the same situation arose. The stage stood empty now, the guest chair where Prince Harry had sat just hours earlier waiting for tomorrow's show and tomorrow's guests. But that chair would forever carry the memory of this night. The night when privilege met principle and lost.